Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask Tom Anything. This is one of the coolest things that we do. This community's really become special to me. You guys ask a lot of amazing questions, and this gives me a chance to answer things that I can't answer in the short format of a tweet or a written response on YouTube. So thank you so much all for submitting your questions. All right, the first one is Shaheen Ansari from YouTube. Thanks for the great content. I wonder if you could share more details on how to meditate in order to move from a negative emotional state to a positive one. First, I just want to acknowledge that Shaheen understands that we can transition from one emotional state to another, and that's something that a lot of people I don't think understand. They believe that they're at the mercy of their neurochemical signals, and you're not. And once you realize that all of that is controllable, that you can completely control the state of your mind, then you can get yourself into the state that you need to be for a given conversation or presentation or whatever it is. You can actually get your mind there. To be honest, Shaheen, I don't use meditation for anything other than getting calm. So I've found that that really is the thing at which meditation is best. So what you're doing is you're tapping into your nervous system and you're allowing yourself to begin to slow things down, to slow your heart rate down, to control your breathing, to really allow your body to relax and release. And I find that in that process, I can allow myself to get recentered. From there, then I may cultivate another emotion, say gratitude. I've used it in the past to cultivate aggression. If I really need to get myself psyched up, but I'm not using anything that anyone would consider traditional meditation techniques. But moving into the realm of just moving from one psychological state to another, you'll find that there are different tips and tricks depending on what you're trying to do. So I'll give you two just as a gateway, and then you can research more. So the first being, if I want to be happy, I actually fake a smile. So if I'm really trying to get myself into a positive sense, the feeling that anything is possible, that everything's going to be okay, to really shake off any negativity, it all starts with a smile. And as I begin to start faking that smile like I'm doing now, at some point it actually becomes real. And even if you're just sort of laughing at yourself for faking the smile, it all begins to change your neurochemistry. The second thing that you can do is, if you want to be aggressive, for instance, I find that when I tighten my muscles, when I make a certain face, I bring my chin down, I furrow my brow, and I flex. And the muscles that I'm flexing are through my core, across my chest, and across my back. So it's bringing me in. It's not an outward pose like that, which I actually find diffuses the energy. It's something that I'm bringing in. It's that intensity that you would need if you were going to attack. And as you feel those muscles tense, as you feel yourself ball up, you feel physically strong. You feel ready. Everything is poised to strike. And when you have that feeling, it just can't help but affect the neurochemistry, and you'll find an intensity, you'll find a level of aggression that you're trying to cultivate. There are many more subtle emotions that you can do through this as well, but those two give you a sense of the different ways that I use my physiology to impact my psychology. All right, the next question is from Hellsmark96, came via Twitter.
What do you do when you finish reading a book? Do you write a summary, or do you only focus on one thing?
The truth is, for me, that whenever I can, I'm going to be taking notes as I go. So I'm reading, I'm pausing, I'm taking notes when something really strikes me, especially if there's like a quote that gave me the chills and it's something that I want to remember verbatim. I know I'm not going to remember it verbatim unless I write it down, and I really do take the time to write it down. Now, truth be told, if I'm doing something else, if I'm driving and whatever, I'm not able to stop and take the time to write it down, I'll either bookmark it and come back to it later, or I let it go. And the truth is, I don't remember everything I read, and I know I actually get a lot of false credit for that. People think I remember a lot more than I do, but my goal is to encounter as many ideas as I can, because I believe that real human intelligence, the thing that makes us all unique, are those unique connections that we make more than the idea itself. So I know once I've encountered it by reading it, I have the part of it that's most meaningful, which is now somewhere lodged in the subconscious of my brain, and when I need that connection, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be there. And that's one of the things that I find so useful about reading a lot of material really fast, is not that I think I'm going to walk away from it with some photographic memory of it, but that I encounter just an avalanche of ideas. Okay, the next question comes from Christina via email. I have a question, but let me preface it by saying that I have many passions. I'm a lover of ideas. I have business ideas, television concepts, movie ideas, project ideas. They all excite me. How does one like me, who loves many different areas, choose where to start? You, Christina, are exactly like me. There are more things that I'm passionate about in my life than I could ever get to in a single lifetime, let alone all the things that I find incredibly interesting, let alone the things that I like, let alone the things that I find as mildly interesting. Like the whole umvelt of things that I am deeply passionate about, that at some point I want to contribute to very meaningfully in my life, they're massive in scope and scale. And the key is to act. And if you've noticed, a lot of times I wear a shirt that says do. It reminds me that only action matters. So if you really, really want to figure out which one of those passions is worth your time and energy and to choose one over the other, you just need to act. Pick one of them, any one. Put them in a hat. Pick one at random. If you really are paralyzed by choice, pick one entirely at random and then go do it. And as you're doing it, your subconscious is going to tell you something about that. You're going to have a feeling. It's either going to draw you deeper into it or it's going to push you away. Either way, listen to that voice. If it pushes you deeper into it, then build that one out. Let that be the one that you really give yourself over to, because you said it's a passion. It doesn't matter whether other people think it should be the passion. It doesn't matter what the outside world is telling you about that. At the end of the day, the one universal trait that people have is they want to be happy. Progress, passion, those things feed into real, lasting happiness, fulfillment, what I call framework happiness, being something, doing something. It's not about having something. So to pick which one to go after, simply act, do it, go down the path. If it's not the right one, move on to the next, and you keep doing that until you find the one that resonates, and then just chase that one all the way down the rabbit hole. All right, the next question comes from Jackie via email. In your morning routine, you describe what you do, but for how long do you do those activities? So here's the most important thing to remember is my morning is essentially broken down into priority, and it's meant to service something that I'm gonna do throughout the day, which means it's gonna change depending on what I have going on in my life. The only thing that doesn't vary is I don't wake up to an alarm. So that's like my modus operandi. I go to bed very early. I try to always be in bed by 9:30 because that's really what's going to determine what time I wake up, because it's not going to be an alarm. So getting the most amount of sleep possible sets you up for success. And the reason it sets you up for success is because you need to be cognitively performing at the highest possible level. And the thing that sets you up for that is not only diet and exercise and things like that, it's just sleep. In fact, if you were going to rob me of one thing for, let's say, a 72-hour period, I can go without exercise and still be sharp. I can go without food and still be sharp. I can't go without sleep. If I went 72 hours without sleep, I would be a mess. It would be hard to hold things in memory. It would be hard to put thoughts together. I'd be struggling, and quite frankly, I wouldn't want to. It'd be a total misery. So sleep is the first thing. That's the only thing that I'm like super hardcore about. Beyond that, depending on what time I wake up, will determine the length of period that my morning routine takes. But as an average, it takes anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So it breaks down something like this. I'm in the gym for 30 to 60 minutes, and then I meditate for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much time I have and what I'm trying to accomplish. Like if I'm really out of sorts and I really need the time to get centered, then I'll make sure that I take the time. I may even skip the gym to take the time in order to do that. But I have rough goals about what time I want to get into work. My ideal is to be into work around 8. If I'm not in work until 9, then so be it. And if on a day like today I get into work at 6 a.m., then I'm loving life. So it all really does vary, but those are rough swags. All right, the next question comes from email via Jackie. How do you tackle boring, repetitive tasks? I suggest one very simple thing. In your life, only do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. So you have to ask yourself and be very, very clear. What are your goals? Because I know a lot of people spend a lot of time doing things that do not move them towards your goals. I would be happy. I wouldn't even notice. And that is the actual truth. I wouldn't even notice if my place was a filthy mess, because nothing that I'm trying to accomplish in my life necessitates that I have a clean house. So when a repetitive task is in service of my goal, the first thing I do is look for ways to automate or outsource. Automating and outsourcing the things that don't really matter, the things that are lowest value contributors to your goals, you want to get them offloaded to somebody else somehow, some way. Or if you can at all possible eliminate that, that would be fantastic. So I am obsessed with systems. Finding systems that help you do things automatically is critical. Like, what are systems that you could do to make whatever easier? Honestly, if I was worried about vacuuming floors, or I would just take my shoes off and only ever walk in socks, or I'd have a pair of shoes that I wear in the house and a different pair that I wear out to keep the floor clean. I'm gonna avoid anything that does not move me forward, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. All right, the next question is from Bilal on YouTube. What about breakfast? What do you eat and when? So for me, even though I own a food company, I'm actually super agnostic about the way that other people eat. I eat towards my goals at all times, so I decide what I'm trying to accomplish at that time. If I'm trying to add muscle, or I'm trying to lose fat, or whatever it is that I may be trying to do, I'm trying to increase endurance, who knows? But whatever my goal is, then I'm gonna pick a diet that specifically helps address that. So right now, I'm on a ketogenic diet, and because of what ketogenics does by getting you fat adapted, which means that my body preferentially is turning to fat as its fuel source, which is great for burning body fat, because instead of always looking for it dietarily, it's gonna turn to the body when you haven't been eating anything. So it'll actually go to body fat, it will metabolize the body fat, release the energy stores from that. So when you're keto adapted, it's actually really easy to fast. So right now I'm in a phase where I'm not eating breakfast. So I wake up and then I don't eat until 11:30, and that's sort of the first marker. Now, if something's really off, let's say I woke up really early at 4 a.m. and I've had an incredibly exerting day, killed myself in the gym, I've had to prepare, let's say, for an episode of IQ or something like that, so I'm really putting a lot of energy into things. Instead of waiting all the way till 11:30, I might eat at 10:30, but I try to break my food up into a 16-8 split. So I fast for 16 hours and then I eat all of my calories in an 8-hour window. That's what I'm doing right now. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's what other people do, but that's what allows me to meet my goals. The next question comes from Shaheen Ansari via YouTube. I heard you refer to the Matrix, and I want to make sure I know what you mean by it. Are you referring to the limits that we think we have? Yes. To put the Matrix in its most basic terms, the Matrix is a fixed mindset. People who believe that their talent and intelligence are fixed, that the world is made up of rules that are not changeable, and that your job is simply to live within the confines of the rules and regulations that have been placed upon you and to deal with the limitations that you have intellectually and physically. That is the Matrix, because it's all a lie. And that's why the Matrix is so powerful as a metaphor, because what they realize in the movie The Matrix is that none of it's real. It's all a construct. It was all somebody else thinking something up and telling people something that actually isn't true. And once you realize it's not true, in The Matrix, they show that you become limitless. Now, I'm not asking people to believe all the way to limitless. I let myself believe it. But I'm not asking people to do that. What I am saying is the thing that will empower you is once you realize that even this world, this one that seems so real, is all made up, and that you can bend or break virtually any rule, maybe not gravity, but if you take planes as the answer to gravity, you see how far you can go. And at some point along the way, people would have said things like, man's not meant to fly, and stuff like that. You're gonna hear that. Those are people that are trapped in the Matrix. They have a fixed mindset. They believe that there's just certain limitations that we're all supposed to abide by. And the people that build the airplanes and do that kind of crazy stuff, and people that build the electric car and take us to Mars and all of that stuff, those are all people that realize that they get to decide what's possible, that they get to choose what to believe. I choose to believe that human beings can do anything they set their minds to without limitation. And because of that, I'll just try more stuff than other people. A lot of it's gonna fail, but because I believe in that, I'm just gonna keep going and keep going and keep going. I don't believe that my talents and intelligence are fixed. I believe they're completely malleable. I can change them at any time, and because of that, I do. And because of that, it makes sense to me to think of the Matrix, because they have amazing lines like, don't try to bend the spoon, that would be impossible. Simply only realize that the spoon does not exist. And then you realize that, well, if everything's a construct, it might as well be the construct of my own mind. That's the Matrix. All right, the next question comes from Kuste Barchan from YouTube. Do you inherently have compassion, or do you cultivate it like a skill set? All right, this is amazing. I'm very glad you asked. Now, here's the truth. At least as far back as I can remember, I've had compassion and empathy. I've just been wired for that. So I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying with me, that's the way that it is. But like anything, I have continued to fuel that, to feed that, to make that a part of my identity, and values and identity drive behavior. So the more I tell the story about being compassionate, about having empathy, then I find myself in times where I may not have otherwise paid attention to somebody's plight. Because it's now part of my identity, it becomes exaggerated, and I actually am more more compassionate even than I would be just by nature. And most importantly, it's really important to realize that any trait, any empathy, compassion, drive, grit, tenacity, like whatever characteristic that you think is valuable, whether you're born with it or not is completely irrelevant. You can really take those in, develop them like a skill set, and turn it into something that is highly cultivated and very useful if it's moving you towards your goals. So I think your real question is ultimately that. Can any skill or trait be cultivated? And the answer is yes. And there's a really cool quote, life is 10% what you're dealt and 90% how you deal with it. And I think that that's really spot on. All right, the next question is from Rafael Pinto via YouTube. What should someone do when they're a total outlier and have a quest mindset among popular mindsets? Here's the truth. In today's age of the internet, man, you should be able to find a peer group anywhere. It doesn't matter where you start. This is one of the most beautiful things about the internet. You've connected with the Inside Quest community, for instance. You now are a part of a group of like-minded people from all over the world. I was just talking with somebody from Ecuador yesterday, routinely talk to people all over Europe. I mean, it's absolutely incredible that we're able to collect all these like-minded people, have very meaningful conversations with them. I've done things back and forth over video, over Skype with people all over the world, and I actually feel a real sense of connection to them. So my encouragement would be, one, don't be afraid to move. Like I up and left at 18 and left everyone and everything that I ever knew behind to be here in Los Angeles. I literally knew exactly 0 people in all of Los Angeles, not a single human being. I was by myself. So you learn to make new friends and you suss out those people. And look, if you go to a big city, you will find like-minded people for sure. And the great news is the internet is the biggest city in the world. So that would be my encouragement. And then again, don't be afraid. Pick up and leave, man. Luck favors the bold. Be bold. All right, the next question comes from DJ View on Twitter.
As you've mentioned in previous videos that you like to listen to audiobooks at 3x speed, how the hell do you remember anything when the information being thrown at you that fast? I find that I have to like pause every 2 to 3 minutes and jot down the notes really quick. So I'm wondering, how exactly do you go about memorizing what you're learning at those insane speeds?
So first of all, I think it's awesome that you pause to take notes. I think that's brilliant. Don't be afraid of that. There's no shame in that. I take notes whenever I can as well. I differentiate between podcasts and audiobooks, so just to be clear. So podcasts, because it's natural language and people are already talking much faster than they would in an audiobook. I listen to most podcasts at 2.5. So going all the way to 3 makes it virtually unintelligible. And some, if they really talk quickly, then I'll listen to them at 2x. From that perspective, it's really just a question of how rapidly can I actually assimilate the information. There's no shame in listening to it slower. I just want people to understand that you can continue to push your own limits, listening to it faster and faster over time. When I first started, 1.5 made me sweat. And then all of a sudden 1.5, I thought, did I bump it? Is it now back to 1? And so you go up to 2, and then the same thing happens, and you go up to 2.5 or 3. And now on audiobooks, where people read the book intentionally very, very slowly, I find myself, even at a 3, thinking, oh, I've bumped it, and it's gone back to a 1. So don't worry about the speed that you're at. Worry about growing. Worry about pushing yourself. But you want to be at wherever you are today where you can actually get the information. And then my last little bit on that is I don't worry about assimilating every piece of information. I'm not worried about that. I just want to encounter the ideas. And usually the gist of the idea will stick with me even if the verbatim notion does not. So that's the key, man. Use it to push yourself, but stay wherever you can actually get the information you need. Next up, from Philip Bluntsworth via YouTube. Hey Tom, I know you read a lot and have abandoned the Buddhist middle way approach to living, and I wanted to ask if you had to pick one book to recommend to someone looking for a more singular direction, what would it be? The answer is I would not tell them to pick up a book. So here's the truth. Here's what I really, really want people to understand. I read because it's super powerful, and I read because it introduces me to amazing ideas. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is action. So if you're looking for a singular direction in your life, if you want to know know exactly what direction you should be headed. You want to take something that you're interested in and go do it. There is absolutely no substitute for actually going out and doing something. And in that doing, no matter how brave or bold you had to be to convince yourself to show up and do it, in doing it, you're going to find out if you want to do more of it. But you're not going to know that by thinking about it. You're going to get in this headspace. You're going to worry about what might happen. You're going to create anxiety in yourself because you're just playing out all these future scenarios, many of which are probably most of which are terrible. So you want to go, just experience it, see what happens. And if it triggers something in you where you feel like, hey, I want to do this more, do it more. And if it repels you and you're like, oh God, that's not at all what I thought it would be, or it's horrible, I don't like it, then don't do any more of it and go find the next thing that you're interested in. And finally, you're going to find a path that you enjoy, that gives you this pull-through energy. It's actually drawing you into it more deeply. As you do it more, you'll get better at it. And as you gain mastery, that mastery will develop into a passion. And that's really where that direction will come from. It's not going to be handed to you magically in the night. It's not going to come in the form of a burning bush or anything like that. It's really going to be you trying a bunch of different shit that you think is interesting. And then one of those things that you found interesting is really going to appeal. And then you will chase mastery from there. And once you start chasing mastery, truly passion will take care of itself. All right, Do for 911 over Twitter has the next question.
Which people have been your biggest role models in life and why?
All right, so I actually had time to think about this one, and I'm going to, for the first time ever, instead of being vague and say that it was authors, though authors really are in sum total, the greatest contributors to my mental growth. I'm going to give you the 7 people who have influenced me the most in my life. All right, so number 1, my parents. Those guys obviously laid the groundwork for me growing up, and I think that we'd all be lying to ourselves if we didn't admit that our formative years really continue to echo through our lives. It's actually something that distresses me greatly. Because I think that people that have really great and powerful formative years have an easier time transitioning into adulthood. I don't make excuses, so whether you had a great childhood or not, I think that you have an obligation to yourself in order to overcome that or to magnify it if it was good. But those two really, really laid just a powerful framework. They wanted me to chase my dreams. And so that was really the thing. They gave me a lot of self-belief, and they really, really encouraged me to push my dreams. They were just always encouraging, and I will forever be grateful for that. My second most influential mentor was Stephen King. Stephen King was the reason that I got into reading, and reading, as we all know, I've beaten this one to death, ended up completely expanding my mind. But if I hadn't fallen in love with the books that he was writing, I never would have understood that reading could be pleasurable. And once it became pleasurable, then fiction books turned into nonfiction books, which turned into my lifelong love of learning. And that changed everything in my life. The next people were Queensryche. So dear Queensryche, if somehow, some way you are watching this now, know that you had a massive influence over me. I once spent an entire summer listening to your album Empire. And I played that tape. Yes, it was a tape. I played that tape so many times it straight broke. It was absolutely amazing. I had a summer job where I had to build a fence. It was actually a pretty massive undertaking. And the entire time I listened to that album over and over and over. And what that album taught me was that the world had forces at work that were bigger than I currently understood. And so at the tender age of 12 or 13 or whatever I was, that really made me think differently about the world, and that there was something outside of myself. And there was a world that had these forces, and if I didn't grow to understand those forces, that they would take control of me, they would manipulate me, and really was sort of that first step on my journey of becoming a Jedi, is to understand the forces at play and to know how to use them to your advantage instead of other people using them to manipulate you. So Queensryche, thank you very much. I owe you guys a very sincere debt of gratitude for that. All right, the next person that influenced me, and this is by far the singular most powerful mentor that I've ever had in my life, and that is my wife. The way that I look at it, I used to think that when you found your soulmate, that it was like puzzle pieces and you clicked together. And I had this very simple vision of, these sort of two pieces that just fit very neatly together. Now I realize that it's really two completely random, jagged pieces of broken rock that the odds of them fitting together seem so impossible, and yet somehow you do. And all those little micro ways where you're weak, they're strong, and vice versa. And so you end up clicking together where you have enough of the same stuff that you love, that you enjoy, that it cultivates that that desire for a long-term relationship. And then the interconnectedness of those pieces actually over time begin to smooth each other out, and you really begin to become just like geological forces. But yeah, she is the most powerful. All right, the next up is gonna be my business partners, Mike and Ron. Now, I learned something very different from each of them, and from Ron, I learned just the growth mindset, sheer tenacity, force of will, having a vision and going after it, and the belief that we're all hyper malleable is something that he lives, something that he helped me codify in my own mind and was really, really important in my entrepreneurial journey. And then from Mike, the thing that Mike is the gravitational pull that keeps me from floating off into space from an entrepreneurial perspective. When you have vision and you dream big and you've got these huge ideas and you want to tackle these massive problems, at some point, you have to make sure that the machinery of the business works. And Mike has really taught me how to accurately assess the safety and health of a business, to be able to understand the power of systems. And it really was Mike that showed me the power of systems and how it can actually free you up to do more, that while it may seem like it's limiting you because it's forcing you to stop doing something, that it actually allows you to prioritize the world. The way that man's mind works is like an engineer, and it really taught me to cultivate engineering principles into my own way of thinking. It's been incredibly valuable. And then the last is Carol Dweck, and Carol Dweck really summed up the growth mindset for me. While I began to understand it intuitionally as I got into being an entrepreneur and working with Ron, neither of us had the codified language to really distill it down in our own minds, which became so important as we tried to be leaders in our companies. And Carol gave us those exact words, those exact concepts, and pushed a lot of them a lot farther than we had ourselves. And so those are the biggest mentors and role models of my life. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Ask Tom Anything. Keep those questions coming in. I love the way that you guys approach different issues from different angles. It's incredibly cool, and I can't wait till the next round when I get a chance to see what's on your mind and offer you guys some answers. All right, until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.